Hello everybody, my name is Craig Bennett and I'm the founder and owner of TechFuse Help, and today I'll explain the differences between 64-bit and 32-bit operating systems, software, games, and so on. Now, this is a common thing that many people don't know about or are confused about, even tech enthusiasts, and a lot of people confuse viruses between not having enough memory in one form or fashion. And I'm here to help you out, explain why, and that way you can figure out why things crashing. So as far as things goes, we're going to be using a little bit of math. I'm going to keep things as simple as possible, and we're going to be using the power of 2, and this means 32-bit, 32 power 2, 64 power 2. 32-bit stuff, it uses about 4 gigabytes. If you do the math, it's a little bit more, but round off, it's very close to 4 gigabytes. And this means 4 gigabytes of RAM, or known as memory. And this means that if you say, for example, got a 32-bit software and you say got 8 gigabytes of RAM, then what will happen is usually RAM uses a buffer. So say, for example, if you got a 32-bit operating system or software, and what will happen is it will really only use about 3 gigabytes, sometimes a little bit more than that, but it usually won't get to the 4 gigabytes. So what happens is if, say, for example, the operating system or the software all of a sudden wants, say, the 9 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes, and it's 32-bit, then what will happen is the operating system or whatever will crash or freeze until it gets sorted out. It's very important to note that because it can dramatically slow down your computer depending on the bit of the operating system and the software that you're using. I've seen it a lot, especially in games. Now, as far as things goes, same thing goes if you have with 32-bit where it has a max hard limit by math of 4 gigabytes, and there's ways to go beyond that, but not by much. Where it has a max at 4 gigabytes, if you say, for example, have a software that wants 3 gigabytes and you can only offer it 1 gigabyte because that's how much RAM you have, well, you're still going to run into that problem because you just don't have enough. So you just make sure that you got enough RAM there. And if you're running 32-bit, I suggest automatically getting 4 gigabytes of RAM. Now, if you're running 64-bit, that's completely different. If you're running 64-bit, the power of 2, that's 16 exabytes, or known as the capacity of 25 billion CDs, or better known as, in most simplest terms, 16 billion gigabytes. Now, this doesn't mean that you need 16 billion gigabytes of RAM. This just means that you can use up to 16 billion gigabytes of RAM. It's way past the capacity of modern day technology. So it's something that you don't really have to worry about. Now, with that being said, if you're running, say, 4 gigabytes, 5 gigabytes, something around that, on a 64-bit operating system or whatever, then you're really undervaluing yourself. You really might as well be running 32-bit. So what you need to do is really go up to the higher end, the 8, the 9, the 10 gigabytes. For the most part, just in case if you're trying to figure out if you got enough gigabytes or if you're purchasing another computer or whatnot. I've seen out of average day use from average day users is about 8 to 10 gigabytes of RAM at any given spike. Sometimes you might get a little bit more here and there, but it's usually 8 spiky, split second spike out of a day, which happens, but for the most part, it's not a killer. Now, For the power user, the power hungry user, the games and whatnot, we're looking at around 24 to 26. I've heard of 32, but I haven't seen that. But for the most part, you're looking around in the 20s for the top of line power users, and that's literally the top of line power users. Now, with that in mind, you can obviously have a lot of RAM, and you can use it all, depending on the software operating system you're running. So as far as things goes, at the end of the day, what you need to look at is how much RAM you have based on the bit of the operating system and the software. So if you're running more than 4 gigabytes on A32, then you're really wasting that money on the extra gigabytes. And if you're running 4 gigabytes or less on A64, then you really need to buff it up to really take advantage of that. So how do you know if your operating system is 64 or 32? Luckily, most operating systems that are sold today in computers is 64-bit, including OS X and Linux. For Macintoshes, real quick, basically you're looking at Intel Core 2 Duo or later, and also Power Mac G5s has the 64 bits, and anything else you really do need to go into the about, and most likely it's a 32-bit. For Linux, all you have to do is go into the about this computer, depending on what version of Linux you're running, and usually that's within the system settings. And with Windows, it's probably the most common. So what you need to go and do is go down to the Start menu and go to the Control Panel. If you're on Windows 8, then go to the Search and go to Control Panel. And what you want to do is go to the System and go down to the System. And right here, it will say how much RAM you have, and below that, we'll see the operating system. Depending on the version of Windows you have, will be depending on the location, but it should be something around that. At worst case, the RAM will be under Device Manager. So anyways, it's been Craig Bennett, the founder and owner of TechViews and Help, and I hope that this has answered your question. And if you do have any more questions following this, then please leave them down below in the comment section. And please like, please subscribe, and please share. And I hope you have a great day.